Hello, everybody. My name is Austin. I'm here at the Ives branch of the New Haven Free Public Library. Thank you all for coming together this beautiful afternoon to learn about growing mushrooms. It seems like these days mushrooms and fungi and is on everybody's minds, is being used in applications such as faux leather by high fashion brands. It's being used as a material for shoes. It's being used as a means of burial. There are now what is called there's a movement kind of loosely referred to as green death or green burial, which tries to be more harmonious with the environment. And we're also learning much more about how essential fungi is to our environment and in the network of forest systems and other biological systems. I'm going to grab a few books that we have. We have a number of books in our collection here that are available to check out that are about mushrooms and mycology. We have, for instance, the National Audubon Society Field Guide to Mushrooms. This contains 762 full-color photographs of mushrooms and detailed descriptions and seasons that the mushrooms grow. Includes important information such as the edibility of it and comments about what it may resemble or what it may look like. Other information is about the spores of the mushroom. So this is a classic. We also have another guide to mushrooms. This is Simon & Schuster's guide with 400 full-color illustrations and photographs with some historical overview and how it's used in various cuisines around the world. We have a book called Mycophilia, Revelations from the Weird World of Mushrooms. And this is basically about mycology culture, the various societies. There's probably a society in every county of every state about mycology, enthusiasts and foragers. It also talks about the role that fungi play in decomposing organic matter and its effectiveness in combating parasites. It talks about truffles, which are a form of fungi, but that grow underground, which is different from mushrooms, which are above ground. We also have this book called Chanterelle Dreams, Amanita Nightmares, The Love, Lore, and Mystique of Mushrooms. And this is also about mushroom-loving people all around the world, especially European and Asian cultures, where it's used not only as food, but also as medicine. It talks about the ecology of the locations that the mushrooms are very important at and in. And then we also have the Encyclopedia of Mushrooms, which again contains a lot of photographs and information about all sorts of varieties that you can find all around the world. So those are available to check out. We're open now to the public in a limited capacity. So if you want to come through and check these out, or you can also still do curbside pickup if you're more comfortable with that. So without further ado, I guess we can start with the task at hand, which is creating a DIY mushroom growing operation. It's pretty simple, and there are a limited number of materials, but the materials that we do use are all extremely vital because of how limited they are. So hopefully you got a bag with the materials that we provided. And in the bag we have, first of all, the mushroom spore. We got this from a great company called North Spore, and they provide fungal spores not only for culinary mushrooms, but also mushrooms that, for instance, are really great in composting systems or to have in your garden. And they come in different ranges of ease for growing. So this is a good beginner spore. It's pink oyster, which is a delicious tasting mushroom. And as you can see, it's starting to grow a bit, and there is a kind of a pinkish hue here. And it has been inoculated with millet and wheat berries. So the grains provide sustenance for the mushrooms. And you basically want to you don't want to refrigerate this spore, or else the spore will die. So we have our spore that has been pre-measured here. We also have newspaper pellets, which are unbleached, unscented, and otherwise untreated. And so what this is basically just a pulp which provides sustenance and a habitat for the fungal spores to grow. And that has been pre-measured as well. And then we also have alfalfa pellets. And alfalfa pellets will also provide nutrients for the fungi to grow. We have provided newspaper bags. These have been repurposed from a staff member. And this is going to be the container that we use to hold the fungi mixture in. Then we also have a misting bottle. And the misting bottle will be used at a later stage when you basically bring the mixture out into the light from the darkness. And that will be after the mycelium, which is kind of like a tendril network, has already spread throughout the mixture. And so we also have water here. You need 4 US cups of water. So I have 4 cups here in 2 16-ounce glasses. It's extremely important that you're using water that is not antifungal, which means that it should not contain chlorine or other substances that is commonly and typically used in treated tap water. For instance, in New Haven, we have treated tap water, and the substances in that will either kill the fungi or greatly inhibit the growth. So if you can, and I highly recommend for you to do, is if you use tap water, either run it hot and then leave it out overnight, or boil it for 15 to 20 minutes beforehand and let it cool, and that will purify the water. Or you could use distilled water if you have a bunch of that on hand as well. If we look at our instructions, it's pretty simple, and it's basically divided into two parts. There's the process that we're covering right now, which is mixing all the ingredients together and then putting it in the bag. And so what we're going to do is we're going to combine the newspaper pellets, which is the large bag, and the spore, and mix it up and then let it sit for a bit so the newspaper can dissolve and form a homogeneous mixture with the spore. So I'm going to just empty empty the pellets into here. I'm going to empty the spore with all the grains and everything. And if there's some spore clinging on to the side of the bag, you can just scrape that off and put it in. You want as much as possible. You don't want to waste any of this because all of it will be essential to yielding a lot of mushrooms that we can then eat or cook with or do whatever you want. So I'm just going to grab as much of this as I can. You can already kind of feel that it has a very unique texture to it. This is a living substance. So I'll start adding, I'll break up some of the spore grain here so it's not too clumpy. Then I'll start adding some of the water. Yeah, we'll be adding the alfalfa in a little bit. We're just doing the newspaper pellets and the spore right now. We'll let those two things soak and mix, and then we'll add the alfalfa. So I'm just using my hand, but if you don't want to use your hand, maybe you can use a spoon. I kind of like getting my hands dirty here, so I'm just using my hand. You want to get it all mixed up, kind of like you're making a dough or something like this. All right, so I put half of the water in, and now I'm just mixing it up, letting it all soak. And then I'm going to put the rest of the water in.
While you're doing that, there's a couple questions in the Q&A. Betsy asked, are the supplies available as a grab and go? Unfortunately, we've run out of all of our mushroom kits. They turned out to be extremely popular. So we will probably be running a similar kit in the future. So keep an eye out in maybe a month or two for our future mushroom kits. And then we also have Alvin asked, what is this streaming all about? Is it an open box product video or a product open box video of mushroom kit from North Spore? No, we purchased the spores from North Spore. but it is not a kit that they have put together. They do have like spray and go kits where it's a box with like a block of sawdust with the, whatchamacallit, the spores in it. So you can just spray those and wait for it to grow. Otherwise, they sell the grains separately and other supplies for making your own mushrooms. But this is like a separate kit that we put together in-house.
All right, so I've put all of the water in. I put 4 cups of water in with the newspaper pellets and the spore. And you should start noticing that the newspaper pellets are starting to break down. That's a good thing. I'm just going to keep mixing it up. I'll just bring it close to the camera to show everybody how it looks. We can see this, but it's starting to get kind of muddy. It's starting to get loosened up. You can still see some of the grain that's in there. That's a good thing. You're kind of making an environment kind of akin to like what you typically find to be really premium and optimum growing conditions for fungi. So if you think about when you see mushrooms growing in your lawn or in the park, it's usually in the fall and in the spring when it's been raining a lot, but it's also not too hot and it's not too cold. They need a lot of water, so this is still breaking down here. It's still soaking up. I'm now going to add the alfalfa. I'm just going to put this in like so. And the alfalfa should break down as well. You want to get it nice and mixed up. If you see the alfalfa pellets, you can even speed up the process by just breaking them down a little bit, crumbling them with your fingers. That will speed up the process of it turning into a homogeneous mixture.
We've got another question in the chat asking about the size of the container. So that particular container is a 6-quart storage container, but the size of the container that you're mixing in doesn't really matter too much because you just need to be big enough to fit all the supplies, and then it's going to be going into the plastic bag, the newspaper bag. So any like bowl or container that's big enough to fit those like 3 bags, the spores, the newspaper, and the alfalfa, as well as 4 cups of water, anything big enough for that is fine for mixing.
Yeah, so whenever I find a big alfalfa pellet, I kind of just break it with my finger. That speeds up the process of it breaking down. I'm digging down, making sure all the water that maybe pools up on the bottom, gets mixed up here. It kind of just takes some time to soak up because they've been dried. These alfalfa pellets are organic, which is also an extremely important aspect. Because they're organic, they won't have any pesticides on them. And pesticides are also something that are antifungal and will harm the spores. So you want it to be as clean as possible. So also, if you're using a container, You want to make sure that's really clean and that there's no soap or antibacterial residue on it. So make sure it's rinsed really thoroughly with hot water. So there's no soap or other residues that will harm the fungal spores. Again, this is a live mixture with living organisms, and you have to be careful not to add anything that will cause detrimental effects. So yeah, I'm still just breaking down these alfalfa pellets. It doesn't have to be 100%. It doesn't have to look like mud. I mean, because it's still kind of dry. I mean, this is what it. Bring it closer to the camera. This is kind of the current consistency. You know, it's kind of like a nice moist. I would say it's more moist than it is wet. You don't want it to be soupy. You want it to be just kind of moist. Here's what it looks like. Still have these kind of bigger pellets here. That's okay. Just keep breaking those down. They'll keep absorbing mixture as we stir it up. So yeah, just keep mixing it up. Getting down and trying to, because the water wants to go down, the water pools at the bottom. So what I'm doing is I'm just using my hand to get down below, scooping it up, and then kind of turning it just to make sure that everything gets nice and moist and the water is distributed evenly among the mixture. I'm still breaking down the pellets. That will help things speed up a bit. If I find like a big one, like for instance, this pellet is kind of on the bigger side, so I'll just break that into a little piece. It increases the surface area that can absorb the moisture.
If anyone has any other questions, either on Zoom or if you're watching on Facebook, just post them in the chat. I'll be happy to read them off.
Okay, and so then our next step that we're going to do, once it's pretty well mixed, there's still like these chunks of pellets, and that's okay because most of it has been absorbed, and there's still a lot of it that has been flaked off into the mixture, and it will continue to absorb moisture and break down as it sits over time. Okay, so what we're going to do now, now that we have it nice and mixed, there's still some chunks of alfalfa pellets, but they're not big, so they'll break down eventually. Because something that is also important is that you don't want to do this in the sun, or like you don't want to do it in front of a window or something where the light might dry the mixture out. You want it to stay nice and moist. It basically has to remain moist for as long as 2 weeks. So I would do this in a cool place, not in direct sunlight or near a window, so it doesn't dry out. So I'm just grabbing a handful and I'm putting the bag over the container just because some tends to spill out. And I'm just gonna basically pile this in. As I see little alfalfa pellets, I'll just break those down as well as I go on. I'm grabbing a handful. Trying to not to make a huge mess, but a little bit is kind of inevitable here. Also, the newspaper bag is a bit thin, or narrow rather. So I guess I'll just adapt here, and I'm gonna just put the bag, make some room for the bag in the container. This way, all the stuff will just fall back into the container.
So we've got another question in the chat. Can we only use that bag, or can it be any bag container? I believe the newspaper bags are selected because they are not treated with antifungal chemicals, correct? Austin? There's a question in the chat. Can we only use that bag, or can it be any bag or container? I believe the newspaper bags are selected because they...
Yeah, the newspaper bag works really well just because of its shape and size. If you use a different bag, it may not fit everything. I think the important thing is that it's opaque. There has to be sunlight that can come through once you get to the second stage of it. So as long as light can reach the mixture and reach the spores, that is what's important. But I'm sure you could use something else, but all of the mushroom growing kits and things that I found, they all utilize this shape, so like a log. And I'm not entirely sure why that is ideal, but it is.
Also, the website where you'd gotten these instructions from said that the newspaper bags are not treated with antifungal chemicals, so that could be why too.
Right, yeah, so the newspaper bags are not treated because they contain newspapers, and so they don't have any acid. They're acid free. That's really important. Like again, I said before, there are so many things that we don't consider to be antifungal that are, and this is a living mixture. So I'm packing this down as I go. You don't want any air to be in there. You want it to be as dense as possible. And you'll kind of hear when you compress it that there's air coming out, and that's a good thing. You want to be also, though, gentle with it, just so you don't rupture the bag. But you don't have to worry about damaging the spores or hurting the spores. So I'm just going to keep filling the bag. I'm going to keep breaking down the alfalfa pellets as I see them. Yeah, so I'm putting some in and then I'm compressing it, getting all the air out, so it's a nice dense mixture. And then, yeah, so I'm just using the plastic bag. I'm kind of just folding it over like this, and then pushing it down to get the air. I mean, you could also just use your fist or your hands to get in there and push it down. That works as well. So I'm kind of just forming this lump here, and it's just going to be filled all the way up. I'm going to just pick up some of the stuff that fell off on the table. Okay, and then once it's all in, make sure that it's nice and compressed. I'm going to also just do this. This is a good way of pushing it down, letting the weight of the mixture itself push down on itself. All right, so now that everything is in here, I'm just gonna twist it up and tie a knot on the top to seal it. So here we go. This is what it all looks like when it's in the bag. I have a pink bag. I think I'm the only one with a pink bag. You probably have a different color. This is compact. There's some shape to it. That's okay. You know, some got down here, but most important thing is that it's nice and compact. Okay, so now that everything is in the bag, I'm just going to take a pair of scissors. You can use even like a kitchen knife or anything. It doesn't have to be that sharp, something with an edge. And I'm going to just cut some slits around the bag. I'm going to do 4 that are about 1 inch long. It doesn't have to be extremely precise. That's just so there can be airflow in and out. So I'm just puncturing the bag here. making a nice little slit. Okay, so now I have 4 slits around the bag, just like so. And that is essential for the growth of the mycelium. The mycelium, like I said before, kind of looks like a white network of tendrils. And that is part of the fungi and will spread throughout the mixture. You'll probably be able to see it through your bag. And in about 2 weeks, you should notice a lot. And once the mycelium has permeated throughout the whole mixture, you'll want to take it out and basically place it somewhere where it can get indirect light. And you'll leave it there and mist it every day with a mister using pure water. Again, it can't be untreated tap water. It has to be pure and it can't be antifungal, or else you won't get any mushrooms. It may take longer for the mycelium to permeate through, depending on the spore, depending on maybe like there was something on your hands that you didn't realize while you were mixing. There's so many factors that can determine how the fungi grow. But it's probably like 2 to 4 weeks for the mycelium to be permeated through the mixture. And then at that stage, you'll take the bag out and start misting it. You'll probably see little mushrooms coming out or bulging out, in which case you can add more slits to the bag so the mushrooms can exit. And once they're about 2 inches in diameter, you can either cut them off or twist them off, and they're ready to eat. Once all the mushrooms are harvested, because they grow out of the bag at a pretty rapid rate, they should about double in size every day. And so that's a pretty fast rate. Once you have harvested all of them, you can actually then put the bag back into the dark place where it's, again, not too hot, not too cold. So maybe in the back of a pantry or someplace like this where it's, again, like between 60 and 70 degrees or something. And let the mycelium repopulate the mixture. Then you can bring it out again and reharvest. If there's any other questions, I could, I try to answer them, or if not, then we can call it a day.
Looks like there aren't any further questions. Oh, wait, one more. How many cycles can this bag go through before the mushrooms stop growing and the nutrients run out?
That's a good question, and I don't know. I would say just keep on going until it stops, which is really vague and ambiguous, especially since it takes like 2 weeks for the mycelium to spread. But I'm pretty sure that you can then use the mixture as um, spore, then to create a new mixture. So basically, you can use some of this and then add more newspaper pellets or more organic alfalfa, and basically restart. But you'll have to add, nutrients, which is in the form of the newspaper pellets and the organic alfalfa.
And we got a couple more. Thank you for the kit and for sharing today, and super excited to try. Thank you so much for organizing this.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it. I'm kind of a beginner when it comes to mushroom growing and fungi stuff in general, but I mean it's such an exciting frontier, almost, it feels like. Um, we're still learning so much about what fungi is and how they influence our world and our life. It's like I always kind of thought of mushrooms as to be a vegetable, but it's actually biologically they're more closer related to animals than they are to plants. And also, we're learning so much more about the role that mycelium plays in ecology. We're realizing that trees in a forest and plants in a forest are all connected with mycelium networks and are able to communicate to each other and also transfer nutrients. So it's kind of astounding, the possibilities of fungi as a material in our world for eating, but also for construction. People are using fungi as building material, like insulation for walls, also as like a styrofoam substitute. So yeah, there's so much to discover, and there's so much science happening around experimenting with fungi and discovering new attributes with fungi. So I'm happy to do this as it provides an opportunity for me to learn a lot about it as well.
All right, thank you, Austin. And I hope everyone has a successful mushroom harvest.